that when we come to the questions as well. And just about myself, I think I'm a master's in literature before I joined Vedica. And Vedica was my second master's program. And post that, I got placed with Max Healthcare, where I did about a year. And then I've been at OYO for the last 14 months or so. So that's been the professional sort of journey. And of course, I'll keep, telling you about myself and my experience while, we're answering questions and things like that. But I understand that if you're considering this program or if you're already enrolled, you might have a lot of questions, and especially given the climate that surrounds us today. And we're more than happy to sort of answer all of those questions, help you in whichever way possible. And even after this sort of session, if you have any more queries, please feel free to, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help.
Great. Shruti?
Hi everyone, I'm Shruti and I'm from third batch, as Karan mentioned. I did my economics, undergrad in economics before this, majors from Shimla University. I joined Vedica immediately after my undergraduation, so I was technically a fresher when I joined the Vedica program. And I'll tell you more about my experience and what made me join Vedica in our conversation today. And now I'm currently working with Airtel Payments Bank. I was placed by during the placements from Vedica, and I joined as a management trainee. Now I'm a product manager here, and it's been about a good 14 months. Great job. So yeah, look forward to conversing with you.
Shruti, I just want to point out that your people are pointing out that your voice is not audible. So if you could just check on your audio once,
Sure.
Perhaps we can do that.
Is it better now?
If everyone can just respond, I think it's okay. You're audible to me.
Okay. Is it better now? Right?
Could be a little bit louder, Shruti, I think.
Okay. I'll make note of that.
Right. All right. So when while Shruti is working on just fixing that, again, I'd just like to talk about the structure of today's webinar. I'll be asking Shruti and Abhilasha some questions about before Vedica, during Vedica, and after Vedica times, and we'd like their elaborate responses on each, just to give you an insight into say what you can expect from the 18 months journey, how you can equip yourself in terms of being ready for a dynamic workforce in a dynamic environment such as today's, and just how the multidisciplinary curriculum kind of help both the alumni kind of go ahead with their professional successes, their charting out their journeys. So I'll probably start with Abhilasha. Abhilasha, so for the first question I'd like to ask, you said you done your master's in literature, correct? And for then to pursue a management practice course, usually the traditional route has been to say do the CAT exam or go via the GMAT exam and either apply to B schools abroad or in India. A large component of that is an emphasis on math as well. And so for say people who've not, I mean, I'm assuming that you haven't stayed in touch with mathematics for a couple of years, given that you've done your undergrad and masters in literature. So, just rounding off that question, why did you choose Vedica as a platform for management practice? Was it the academics that drew you in? Was it the faculty? Perhaps you could elaborate a bit on that.
Sure. I think, yeah, that's a question that I also asked myself quite a bit. And it was one of the first sort of factors of anxiety as well, right? Not like 2 years, I hadn't been in touch with math, so to say, for about 5 years, because it was a master's that I did, right? So my last sort of dabbling with anything quant was, in class 12. Having said that, I'll just take that in 3 parts, I think. One is, why did I choose to sort of not continue with the literature, sort of line? And I think for me, it was very simple. I didn't want to stick to an academic route for now. I wanted to do something which was more real world. When you think real world, you think, okay, you know what? Corporate business, this is something that's exciting, especially to like someone at that age. I wanted to earn more as well, like I'll be very honest. So a lot of things feed into that decision, and I thought, why not try my hand at something something different and something more diverse, which actually requires more skills. Now, what attracted me to the Vedica program Very simply, so I was at LSR for my undergrad, women's college, very strong women's college, and even in my master's program, I was surrounded by a lot of very strong women, friends, faculty, etc. And so this entire theme of what does it mean to be a woman in today's day and age, especially entering business as well, just the entire ethos of the program really sort of invited me to check it out a little bit more. When I did do that, the kind of people that were involved with the program, that was mind blowing. So when you look at the kind of faculty that kind of visit our program, the kind of people in terms of our co-deans, the program team, and that time it was still very nascent. People were still sort of joining in, but just the kind of I think involvement that everyone was showing right from the interview process to the orientation process, I thought, okay, never am I going to get another environment where the dean probably knows my name, like, firsthand, is wanting to know me as a person, rather than just what my mark sheets and my sort of resume says. And I thought that's pretty incredible. And the third was just the course itself, like very novel idea to have a mix of liberal arts and management. And time and again, it's been proven to me and to, I guess, everyone that I speak to, and the kind of environment that we're sitting in today, that you don't just need business principles, you need a lot of context to that. And what brings context to this is the kind of stuff that we studied in the liberal arts aspect. So I think a mix of people and course, and then just my own, will to kind of do something different.
Right. That's a great answer. And, I'd just like to emphasize on a point that you mentioned is, a lot of universities in India, whether it's at the undergraduate or graduate level, they're so big that one tends to end up feeling like a number. And, with Vedica's cohort, and your cohort was especially, pretty tiny. That level of personalization with the faculty, with each other, with the dean, that must have been a fantastic experience, bonding wise.
Yep. Definitely. And I think, and I can speak, at length about this, the people that I actually got to meet within the program, that actually completely broke apart my sense of how I used to look at the world. While doing literature, it was still very unidimensional, funnily enough. Like, even though I'm doing something as, interesting and from all over the place as literature, it is still a very exclusive sort of way of thinking. But the kind of people I met here, the backgrounds that they came from, the struggles that they'd had in life, living together, which was a whole struggle in itself, all of that just makes you like think about yourself and about different people in a whole different light. I think that was the supremely, like, the most exciting part of me about the program was the people that I met.
Great. All right. So Shruti, I'd like to turn the question to you. So why did you choose Vedica as your postgraduate platform, and what drew you? What was that one thing that drew you to it? Was it the shadow module? Was it the placements? Was it the academics of the course? So the difference was, I guess, that with Abhilasha's batch and Shruti's batch, is that the placements had not happened for the first batch because it's an 18-month cycle, and the second batch had joined before the first batch had completed, as compared to Shruti, who's in the third batch, who saw the successes of the first and the second batch happened. So, Shruti, could you elaborate?
So, am I audible now? Is it better for the Karan? Is it better?
I can hear. I just hope everyone else can.
Okay, so when I finished my undergrad from Shimla, I was actually contemplating what to do next. My course was research in economics, so I was more in the academic side of during my undergrad, and the prospects were also more towards the academic line, which I wasn't wanting to continue, and I wanted to look at something more of a management, from a management perspective. Now the thing was, I myself didn't know what I wanted at that point in time, and one of the major things that pulled me to Vedica was the freedom to not just look at management, but also the practical aspect of self-learning, communication, and the entire liberal arts curriculum that I was more comfortable with, because even in Shivnada during my undergrad, we had a very liberal arts approach. But what was different between the two courses when I joined Vedica was that Liberal arts in Shinado was like a normal course. You learn, you read, and you do it yourself. But in Vedica, because the numbers are so small, you actually get the chance to practically understand what it means to be in a liberal arts program. Whether be it gender courses, be it critical thinking, and that was very unique, which I think wouldn't have been possible otherwise. That kind of exposure you do not get otherwise. And Vedica wasn't that much of a difficult decision, to be quite honest, because it was more comfortable to the course that I was looking at, not completely management, but also having those aspects of liberal art programs. And next was the interview process. My conversation with the program team at that time was really interesting. During my telephonic interview, it was not an interview, but we were genuinely talking about the state of the economy, the gender parity in the industries, what is it that excites the team, what is it that I want, what are my interests and all of that. And more than that, the focus was not on whether I am a fit for the program, but also whether the program is a good fit for me. So that was something I realized it during the interview itself. So I knew it was a good chance to take, and I'm really happy because the kind of people I've met at Vedica, the kind of courses and professors you interact with, you don't get that anywhere else. Obviously, the shadow was the turning point, but more than the shadow, once you join the course, it completely turns around to a lot of focus on becoming more self-aware, focus on communication, and how to. Which was actually, it seems like a normal course, but it's not. It's not like a simple English course where you write an essay, you're done. It's a lot about practice, and Vedica really pushed me in that sense because public speaking is not my thing, and that sort of turned around for me because they really challenged me at every step of the way. So yeah,
Great,
that's
great.
me about it.
Thank you for pointing that out. And I'd just like to pick up on a nugget that you mentioned about the admissions process being quite diverse, quite inclusive, very unique as compared to other things in terms of, both the institute and applicant finding a fit for each other. And I really, really, as a member of the team as well, feel that that's a big emphasis that's laid on, is that the connect that's made between the two, that's very special. So thank you for pointing that out. All right, so for the second question, I'll turn to Abhilasha again. So now, we're talking about your time during Vedica, during your 18 months there. Perhaps you could shed some light on, I don't know, your favorite course, your favorite professor, something that you picked up perhaps, in your shadow time. What was your favorite experience or a couple of experiences? Could you, narrate to us, please? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I just unmuted it. I think look, so there were moments in time which were favorites. One course was favorite because of the teacher. Another course was favorite because of the work that it made us do, whether it was a group activity or something else. So I think two courses that really stand out for me. One was a course by Stacy on organizational behavior. And that's something that I never thought, I'd be interested in. But it just so happened that the way she kind of conducted that session and just her energy. And this is a professor, who's obviously extremely well-traveled, and she knows how to kind of hold the attention of a classroom. So that's a course that kind of, these are principles in everyday life, but I think it was more about the way she brought it out. And she just forced us to work in teams, do a lot of introspection. And that's one thing that happens a lot at Vedica. We had a joke about how by the end of the course, you can talk about yourself from 30 words to 3,000 words. And, that's something that you can do. And I think that's something that's really great about the program. So that was one course. And the other one was another one by Kaustubh Chakrabarti. And that was, he was coming from a consulting background, having spent a lot of time at McKinsey as well. And, that was about sort of deconstructing ideas, thought processes, and really questioning, we talk about business ideas, when we talk about business solutions, but what are we really trying to solve? Are we asking the right kind of questions? I thought that was a pivotal sort of, moment where I started thinking about things like consulting, strategy. That aspect became very interesting to me, and I think it has played a role later on, because that's also the kind of roles that I've chosen. And retrospectively, I realized that, look, that might have been one of the reasons why. And you're always attracted to a teacher's style, right? And you kind of want to emulate that down the line. So I think that really inspires you.
Fantastic. All right. So, Shruti, what about you? I know Abhilasha spoke a bit about the academics. Anything about the shadow leader module, or anything about, say, the later part of Vedica, about how kind of the course cumulatively kind of adds up, the management track, liberal arts track, comms track, and personal growth track, and towards the end of the 18 months, how does that experience feel?
Okay, so courses were one. That was the entire focus in the first half of the program. But coming to the shadow module, there's a prep even before the shadow module, which was really surprising because we didn't know how the shadow module is going to go about. A lot of it was like going with the flow. But sort of having that preparation before the shadow module itself gives you a sort of direction. And what was really interesting was the way the team mapped us to all our shadow mentors. So there were a few things that you could really connect with when you joined when you entered into the shadow phase. And one of the things was key. There were multiple ways of going about the shadow module, and that the team had also given us in the beginning itself. You might not have the complete shadow experience, but you can decide what you make out of it, and that was something that was really useful for me because my mentor was also a first time mentor, and she actually was as lost as I was, but we had a good conversation in the first week, and then she gave me a project to work on, and I learned a lot. And what she also did was she opened up the flow for me, so I could go approach anyone, and I could learn about anything from marketing to business analytics to going to the editorial team. So I shadowed with Durga Raghunath, who was at that time the CEO of Economic Times Digital. And what was one of the best experience was towards the end we had a conversation, last conversation, which was really insightful, where she shared all her experiences. What was it that drives her? What are things that actually happen in a workplace from a gender standpoint? What is this gender inequality that people talk about? And we had a lot of conversations, and then the next phase was right after shadow, where you are jumping back in to get ready for the placements. Now, one of the best parts about Vedica was that the placement preparation is out of the world. I think the kind of focus that the team gives, the kind of resources the team brought in for us was amazing, because as a fresher I had no idea what all goes into an interview process. What kind of rounds do you have? Like, you're aware of it, but since we never had that, and even in our undergraduation, I was completely walking blind. And throughout the preparation, you also get a direction from the team as to what is it that you want to do, where is it that you want to go. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, I genuinely didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do post, even undergrad or even Vedica. Speaking to my peers, a lot of guidance from the program team, a lot of conversations with the professors, your own likes, dislikes, strengths, weaknesses, mapping all of these actually helped give me a direction to what kind of a role can I work on, would I would like to start with, what kind of an approach and everything. And I think that was very important for me at that point. And obviously the prep was amazing. So yeah, and overall the pressure was there, but I don't think you felt it, because the team was also always there if you wanted to speak to them. They were always there waiting for you after the interview. They were more happy when you got through a round or got through the placement. So that was really nice to see, the one-on-one focus.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, the emphasis is laid on the customization and how personal the program can be for each student.
Yeah,
So I'm
definitely.
glad that you feel that way. Okay, back to Abhilasha again. So I'd like to point out that Abhilasha you're currently a business manager at OYO, correct? And transitioning to that from a literature background is one of the most impressive things I've heard of. It would be a role that any engineer or business graduate would kill to have right now. So can you talk about your experiences post Vedica in terms of your professional life, and perhaps if there have been any transferable skills that you've seen that you learned at Vedica which you're using right now, or say something, a current business scenario or a workplace scenario that you remember, oh, we spoke about this in the classroom.
I think this question pretty much sums up my hashtag by Vedica moment, because I and especially now I'm a strong believer in the fact that when employers are employing, picking you or choosing you, or where companies are choosing you, beyond a point, they are investing in you as an individual only. Only what you bring to the table, right? In terms of your just your enthusiasm and your willingness to work hard. I swear that is literally what it comes down to in most situations, because skills you really do pick up on the job and you learn. And this seems like one of those statements that you always hear. And when I was at Vedica, I would also hear that, don't worry too much about the role, just focus on doing whatever you do really well. And interestingly enough, when I got placed at Max Healthcare, this is something that I'm actually personally also proud of, because my transition to OYO was not, based out of any interview that I had to give or any such thing, simply because my manager at Max Healthcare was becoming the CEO at OYO now. I feel happy that, he saw merit in sort of asking me to move with him. And I think that's what speaks volumes about what we pick up at Vedica, because the few things that I've heard, and OYO has gone on to recruit at least like 33% of every batch, post that movement. And the one thing that I hear a lot about all the women that get recruited from Vedica to OYO is that, wow, you guys are really enthusiastic about work. You guys are always willing to work. You guys are always happy. And these are words that you wouldn't normally sort of associate with great workers in a work environment per se. But I think that's one of the, and I was watching, just to make a little segue, I was watching one of those videos that Pramath did as well, when he said, what are the 5 words that you associate with Vedica? And he said one of it was just, it's a happy program. And I think that is genuinely infectious. You take that to the workplace, it shows enthusiasm. People want to work with you because you want to work with them. And so that's on the softer side of things. On the more technical aspects of the job, my 1 year at Max as an analyst, it forced me to sort of, learn my Excel and learn my, table and analysis and all of that. That was the kind of groundwork for what I'm doing now at OYO, because at OYO CEO office, it's a pretty high stakes environment in terms of just the kind of scrutiny that the company gets. I mean, there's articles every day about what's happening, what's good, what's bad, mostly what's bad, but that's fine. And I think just the ability to deal with that, it's high pressure situations. I think in those scenarios, mentors, shadow, a lot of the prep that went into mock interviews, what are you going to do if this happens? What are you going to do if that happens? I remember back in the hostel, now that you tell us to relate, scenarios as well. I think I think, I remember like all of us being locked in, like 6 of us being locked in one room, and we're like asking each other questions, helping each other prepare for the interviews. The questions range from what you're going to wear to how you're going to answer this question about yourself. And it's a great community that gets formed, right? I think it all comes back in leaps and bounds as I, work today in this environment. And I think, it's everything basically, everything that you pick up, you're collecting those experiences, and then it all comes to fruition. Like now, I definitely see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic, first of all. And second of all, what you said about your mentor, switching and taking, those he trusts along with them. That's a sign of, you see, for example, Siddhartha Vadarajan, who's the editor-in-chief of The Hindu, who moved and started The Wire, again, took his team there. There have been consultants, partners at McKinsey, for example, who've taken so many people there. Just the fact that, at least as a Vedica scholar, at least your work spoke so much for itself that he chose to have enough trust in you. I mean, I'd like to ask you a follow-up question here. So, I mean, the fact that Vedica has so many mentors, whether it comes to the shadow mentor, to program mentor, to women in the governing council, there's a large network that you take away from when you leave Vedica. Of course, the biggest part is your batchmates itself. But can you just speak about the importance of having that Vedica network accessible to you at times for, say, whatever help you need?
I think so. One way that I would look at it is, what is a network? It creates a net, and that net sort of really allows you to take risks, right? Because you're at the back of your head, you're just like, what's the worst that could happen? You know what? I'm going to do this, and if it doesn't work out, I have a bunch of people that I can sort of fall back to for advice, for getting me out of trouble, so to say. And I don't mean trouble in that sense, but if so, and one of the things that I was always told by my boss, even at Max and now at OYO, is that just do your thing, run with it. We'll see what happens. And that's the power of network, because you just run with things and you see what happens, because you have that at the back of your head. You have that network of safety and that network of support. So I know I can always sort of reach out to Anuradha. I can reach out to my shadow mentor. I can reach out to the multiple people that have been professors as well, because it's all about the rapport that you build.
Mm-hmm.
And here I would just like to emphasize, it is as much the responsibility of Vedica to give you access to that network, but it is also your responsibility to keep maintain that network, because that doesn't happen on its own. It takes work and it takes some investment, because it is a two-way street, and you give and you get. But if you give a little, the good thing is you get a lot back in return. And I think that's one of the biggest learnings that I had, because that was one of the sort of regrets also, because you just get exposed to so many individuals at Vedica. Now when I think about it, I'm like, maybe I should have just invested more in that one relationship. But that's okay, because I have 10 others that I can always kind of go back to. But that's something that you should do it more proactively, I would say, than retrospectively.
Yeah, so wise words, not just for Vedica, for everyone, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I surprised myself.
Yeah, well done. All right, going ahead now, Shruti, we'd like to hear from you. You're a product manager now, and first of all, congratulations. That's a fantastic role. So being at that leadership position where you're deciding everything from how it's designed, implemented, figuring out the bugs, to all the way from marketing it, thinking about the business aspect of it. Just taking care of a product like that involves so many verticals, and looking at different lenses for a particular solution. Do you feel that the multidisciplinary approach education in Vedica, with you doing 4 different tracks, do you think you can correlate that to what you're doing right now, and did that help you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one of the reasons why my track shifted all of a sudden. So I joined Airtel as a management trainee, but I was supposed to join the customer experience team. Now, what happened was that during our management stint, the training stint that we do there, I had just had a two months ka training stint, because the project that I was working on, I got a very good review. I was doing the first one that everyone has to go through is with sales, and we really deployed well on the ground. And there was a good feedback from all the managers. And then my manager said, okay, you just join my team. It's okay, you can leave the training now. You join and you learn on the job. And then I joined her team, and she was heading the financial inclusion team at the bank, where we are looking at all the product consumer propositions and programs specifically for the bottom of the pyramid.
Sorry, Shruti, I'm sorry to stop you, but I guess there's another comment saying that your voice is not audible. So perhaps...
Is it better now?
I think Pragati is asking. Pragati, I hope it's better now. You can continue with your answer. Sorry to cut you.
No worries. So so when I did join the team, there were a bunch of projects which were just thrown at me, and to be quite honest, the daily trend used to keep changing. What I used to have in a day, items lined up for a day, that used to change during the day, and that being able to handle that actually came from our curriculum in Vedica, because Vedica was something similar, where there were terms where you had a lot of work, where you had different courses going on. You had to manage time. You needed to learn how to deliver on those deadlines, and that was something that doesn't come easily. And that was one of the good feedbacks that I received even from my manager when I was working under her, where she said, it's technically not possible for you to deliver the way you are delivering, because nobody expects that. We understand you're going to make mistakes, so you don't have to. I'm quite surprised you're ready to move ahead. You never say no to me. You never say no to a project. And that was actually a feedback that all of us from Vedica got. So the three of us from the same batch we got placed, and we got such a good response from the entire senior management as well, where they were quite impressed that your attitude towards work, you would never say no, because you see that you're going to learn something from it, and then you move ahead and deliver. Or even if it's not working out, you figure out a way. So that was something that we got a good response for. And I think that's something that Vedica teaches you, because it's not just the learning bit, but it's also the practical aspect, how you spend your time, the continuous guidance from the program team as well when you're falling back on certain, projects where you're not able to manage time. All of that comes back here, wherein this, the idea is to never say no. There's always a learning involved in whatever you do, whether you don't even if you don't know, it's a learning in progress. So that's the kind of attitude you take, and then you see where it takes you.
That's great. Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, something about attitude that you mentioned, rightly so, is that circumstances might change, but you can, your attitude is something that's completely dependent upon you. So just to know that the Vedika scholars, have that kind of exuberant attitude and are saying yes to projects and to learning even after Vedika is over, that's just a testament to the program. All right, so I guess thank you for the initial few questions. Now we're opening it up for question and answers. I'd encourage everyone who's on the chat, please feel free to ask about anything, whether it's the academics, whether it's a specific track, whether it's about the Shadow Woman Leader module, whether it's about the placement prep or the shadow prep, whether it's about the actual placements as well. So feel free to ask anything that's pertinent to both Abhilasha and Shruti's experiences. Of course, like the standard questions about admissions procedures and all of that stuff is either on the FAQs on the website, or you can ask the admissions team directly. But I'd encourage you to ask questions to Abhilasha and Shruti about their student life, or their experiences in the hostel. How it was bonding with their batchmates, because I know that the bonding that I see that happens in the Vedica hostel is unparalleled. I'd just like to just add a word here about the diversity at Vedica, is that the class composition as well is of women from different backgrounds geographically, that means all across India, different backgrounds educationally, of course, and professionally as well. Some women are coming in as freshers, some women are coming in as, having 4, 5, even 7 years of work experience. So, living with them, having classes with them, interacting with them, and that's something that I've seen in classroom. The discussions that happen are quite novel. I mean, if you're sitting down and talking about personal finance with someone who's 21 and someone on the other age who's got 29 or 30, they'll have very different views on how money is to be handled. And that conversation that happens in the classroom and that environment that's created is first of all, there's no competition. It's all about collaboration. It's all about learning. So that's something that I've seen that's different there at Vedica. Yeah, that was my small plug. I'm moving onwards. First question, can you please describe a day in Vedica, like the schedule / hostel life, etc.? All right, so why don't you take this question, Abhilasha?
Yeah, perfect. I'll take this up. So no one day is similar to the next. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. But that's what lends the, absolute magic and madness to what life at Vedica is. I truly believe that those 18 months, were the sort of hardest, but also the happiest that I've experienced at a stretch, of course. I'll just divide this into two parts. I think, the hostel life, it's absolutely exhilarating. I mean, you're in this little, you're in Katwaria Sarai, okay? You've never heard of this place before. And, you start making your sort of home in this space. You have a roommate and you have, obviously you start forming groups, and, there is a bunch of people that you're more close to. And then there's your classmates who you will anyways be close to. And that's something I take, absolute guarantee about. It's madness, honestly, to work with friends in a professional capacity and also maintain that level of friendship is an amazing sort of very thin line that you're going to learn how to tread. But once you do that, I swear, the outside world just becomes that much easier, because those guys are not even your friends, right? I mean, that's just on a lighter note, like you really learn to, because you might have fights, you might have arguments, you might have disagreements, but you're going to have to put that and resolve that somehow, because you also have to live together, and you have to eat together, and you have to ultimately help each other out in the next project, and the next project, and the next project. So it really forces you to keep zooming in, zooming out, you know understand whatever sort of problems, issues you're having, have real conversations about it, because it's a small space. It's going to force you to have conversations with people the conversations you don't really necessarily want to have, but over time you become very comfortable with those conversations as well, and that's a great thing. Second thing is about hostel life. Yeah, it's really fun. There's a lot of autonomy that the team and the people, the managers, the program managers at Vedica also give to you, and it's up to you to show that sense of responsibility. And I think being a student is just really, it's special, right? Because all you have to do is be a student. There is no other sort of want of your time, and you can do anything that you want apart from that. So as long as I think you're responsible about what being a student is, you can do a whole bunch of other things. I became a poet. We became dancers. We became, we would come together to fight for a cause, and that cause would seem really big at the time, and we would also have petty disagreements, but over time that just teaches you a lot of skills. My fondest memories are always of my conversations with people that I wouldn't talk to on a daily basis. I remember I had a literature background, so I would always be going to different people's room during whenever we had these communication assignments due. I would be editing papers and giving my feedback. And similarly, when I had to understand super complicated, I don't know, Six Sigma theory of whatever, in operations and stuff, I know I would go and sit and people would, be ready to spend the entire night explaining a concept to you, just because you don't get it, and even though they get it. And that was amazing. The next morning we would all go for an exam, but it just felt nice to know that we'd all studied together in any case. Having said that, it's I think I've covered a lot of different aspects of it. No one day is similar. The schedule does get hectic, yes. But like I said, I mean, it's also because there are so many different things that you're doing in the course, that, it does seem saturated at points. But I think with a fair bit of time management, that is manageable. I think you also get a lot of liberty to spend time outside hostel. You create your little ecosystem. There's there's your pet chai wala, there's a chaat wala, there's some things you order from. You have a lot of inside jokes, and these kind of stay with you forever. And I think that's a community that extends beyond.
That's great to hear. I mean, again, I'd just like to pick out one thing that you said, which was the autonomy that you get in hostel life. I mean, for everyone that's here, for the fifth batch, I don't know if you know, we have students all the way from, freshers to women who are 45 years old. And, you really can't treat them in a very kind of strict or enforced environment. So Vedica's policy has always been to treat its students as responsible adults and expect a similar level of responsibility and integrity, to their work or, whatever. It's just that reciprocal relationship has always been there. So thank you for pointing that out. All right, so let's move on. Anushree asked, and perhaps Shruti, you could take this one. How much difference have you experienced before and after Vedica? Perhaps you could take that in two levels, like I guess personal difference and then a professional difference.
Okay, sure. So I'll start with professionally because that seems much more easier in my mind. So I didn't, Vedica gave me a lot of opportunities for me to test out and figure out what is my calling. I wouldn't say calling that, but yeah, calling, because when you're a fresher and you come from a research background with no experience, it takes you need a lot of exposure to really understand what fits you, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, how do you align them, and then join a workplace. And that is the freedom that you get at Vedica to understand, learn those, experience it for yourself, and then take a call. That's amazing. So now I have a good idea of, okay, what are my strengths, how do I want to align it, and where do I see myself going forward every 5 years, 10 years down the line. So professionally, I think I've got a lot of direction and confidence to take these challenges ahead. Because one of the things in workplaces, you have to be visible, you have to take initiative. And especially being a woman, I think that becomes even more important when you're in the workplace, which is something I didn't really take it very seriously when I joined Vedica. But the courses and the practical experiences that you go through, they actually work out later when you join the workforce. Uh, Personally, there's a lot of self-awareness I would come to. The continuous feedback process throughout the course, where you're not just having feedback on your courses, your performance, but also personally how you're growing as an individual. That is really taught me how to keep reflecting on who I am as a person right now and what can I do better. Where do I go next? What is the next thing I need to learn? So that is that kind of awareness is something that I've taken away from it, and which wouldn't have been possible if there wasn't that environment that the program team and the faculty build in Vedica, that you need to keep evaluating yourself both professionally and personally, because it's very important to keep learning. But if you want a direction to that, keep seeing, keep evaluating where are you at the moment. So yeah, yes,
Yeah,
that
so
helps.
that's a great answer. I'm moving ahead. Pragati, I think your question has been answered by Rahul in the chat, so I'm going to move on to the next question. Shubhita has asked, how is Vedica different from other management programs? Shubhita, I'll take this up. I'll answer this in three parts. Um, First of all, the academics. As you know, Vedica has 4 different tracks that run simultaneously, which are the management track, personal growth track, liberal arts track, and the communications track. And each of them feed into each other. So that's number one, the most important aspect, that there's a multidisciplinary curriculum. Number two is that we have a shadow, a woman leader module. Other MBA schools, you will see there's there's an internship that they have, and we feel that internships are kind of outdated, as there's not really much of a feedback system that you get out of the two-month internships that students usually do. It takes a week and a half, or 2 weeks to first of all even adapt to the workplace and then start off. With the shadow woman leader module, students are directly paired one-on-one with CEOs. They have conversations before, they have preparations before, and that exposure to an industry and to a work style, to a leadership style, even before you graduate, that actually really informs a student's opinion of the workplace. Some students come back, having really, you say, passion for, say, marketing, and they've always been interested in marketing, and they just solidify that passion. And some students actually come back, say, perhaps they thought they were interested in marketing, but they actually tried it out in the real world, and they didn't really like it. And actually, that's one of the best times to filter out what something that you like and something that you don't like. Otherwise, that's usually done when people switch jobs post Vedica or post your undergrad experience. So the fact that Vedica gives you a chance to do that right at the middle of the course, that's something, of course, that's unique. And the final aspect is, of course, the women's only aspect of the program. That Vedica's mission is a kind of built up on getting more women back into the workforce, and ensuring that there's equal representation of women and men in the workforce. And I don't know if you know this, but over the last 15 years, we've lost literally the size of Australia, about 24 million Indian women from the workforce. So that's something that we need to amend, and I'm pretty happy that Vedica is kind of spearheading that change. So I hope that answers your question. I'll be moving on to the next one. Um, Akshara has asked, how does Vedica work for freshers, as there might be batchmates with good work experience already? Perhaps, Shruti, you could answer this in a minute and a half.
Yeah, so actually that's not a bad, it's not a handicap per se, because you learn a lot from your peers as to what is the right way to go about an interview or even like a project that you're doing. Definitely, there's also scope that you have because you are kind of like a fresh board. You have your learning capacity or capability is much better than theirs, because they have this fixed notion, okay, it has to work this way. And that kind of challenges, both of you challenge each other as to what is the better way to take, or what is the approach that we should take for this. In terms of placements, there have never been any. It obviously there's a difference in. It depends on the kind of role that you are applying for, because if you're completely changing your discipline from, say, you were earlier in marketing and now you want to move to HR, they will. It depends on the company that's coming in, and also on yourself as to how are you going to portray that skill. Because technically, you are also a fresher in an HR role, so that will also matter. But overall, there's never been a handicap per se for me as a fresher or my friend who has had a work experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to reiterate that on the fourth batch, we had two students who were placed at Western Digital at the highest salary, and one was a fresher, and one was the another student with 4 years of work experience. So evaluation wise, everyone stands at the same point. Okay, moving ahead. What were your favorite classes, and how did the lessons get you going in the real world? Uh, I mean, I know you've mentioned. I'll ask Abhilasha. I know you've mentioned Stacy's classes and Kaustubh's classes. Perhaps you could talk about one more class, and perhaps what were the lessons that you took that you could then apply to the real world?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I spoke about those two classes. I think one thing, and actually this ties to the previous question of how Vedica is different also from the other management courses. One thing that I've genuinely seen sets me apart, at my workplace, is the communication aspect of what we do at Vedica. I think just having a background in it, I was always sort of comfortable, but the way that there were so many people, I remember Preeti Singh's classes, I remember Preeti Satori's classes, I remember even Saurabh for that matter, just being absolutely specific about what you want to say, about structuring what you want to say, and about putting it out in the best possible manner. It just helps you grab someone's attention, it helps you convince people, and it definitely sets you apart, because everyone has that basic sense of getting it, like they all get it at the workplace, but how well you're able to convince people of your solution, that's fantastic. I'll just share an example. I was an analyst, like a data analyst at Max Healthcare, and I'm sitting one night and I'm just sort of doing my pivot tables and whatnot, and that day the budget had just been announced, and I remember my boss then, he's walking out and he tells me, look, I'm going to be on NDTV in the next 30 minutes. I have to talk about the health aspect of the budget. Just send me pointers while I'm in the green room and in the car. And I was like, that's great that you think that I can do this. So, and I just quickly got into my, let me just quickly look up the, sources that I need. Let me give out the best citations. Let me pick out, the way to structure this argument. What all should we look at? And it turned out to be a great, it was my points that he was kind of speaking, on TV, to some extent. And I thought, look, that's great, because it teaches you to not get flustered in a moment like that, because these situations are going to come up. And it's something that we've all done at Vedica. We're doing one thing and the next we're we're doing a theater class, and then we have a really important strategy class. And, you're just trying to make sense of how those two even make sense in the same day, but it somehow just does. Because in theater, you learn voice modulation, and how best to kind of stand, and how to kind of project your voice, and how to convince people. And then in strategy, you learn this, like a new way of thinking, and then it just completely fuses together very well, and you're able to present the best product, to someone. So I think in a long-winded answer, but these are lessons that you really carry with yourself. I would say pay a lot of attention to the communication course, because that does set you apart in the real world.
Wow, that's a fantastic experience to know about talking about the budget health aspects of, and that you were given that less time. All right, I see a question from Richa that's come in recently. She's unable to hear audio. Richa, I think if you can perhaps log out and log back in, that might fix it. I think the audio is clear for everyone else. Why don't you just try, and then we can if you are still facing problems, then we'll get someone to help you out. All right, so going again back in chronological order, Anshu has asked, what are the functional areas in which maximum placements occur? Other than the major ones, what other functional areas are students allowed to explore? Let me answer the first part of this question, and perhaps one of you could take the second part. So in terms of, say the maximum functional areas in which placements are happening, We have obviously roles in marketing, roles in sales, HR, of course, general management roles. And so we recently also had quite exciting roles such as growth hackers or being in part of the founders team. So that's something that we've seen is both traditional and novel roles are coming to Vedica, and students are actually kind of getting these opportunities to go and pursue them. How about one of you pick up the second aspect of the question, which is other than the major ones, I guess what I've listed, what other functional areas are students allowed to explore?
I'll just, I think I've seen one trend really come up in the last 2 or 3 years, which is that of the program manager role in someone's office, in a CXO office. I think before I joined the workplace, I didn't really know about that role existing. It's not a functional role per se, because it's not affiliated to, like, say, a marketing or an ops or a supply or something specific like that. But this is an interesting role because I think it exposes you to everything at one go. And I remember in my batch, there was a company called Soultree, which was hiring in that specific role. Of course, Oyo did as well. And I think that's great because also if you just sort of step back and look at what's happening outside the Vedica environment, I think with the coming up of startups, roles and functions are not going to be as sort of defined and as what do you say, like square edged as they are right now, because everyone's going to have to do everything. And honestly, the people who are going to stand out are the ones who can do so much more with less. Especially, I don't know what's going to happen to, I mean, nobody knows what's going to really happen after this particular the last 2 months that we've spent, but I see a lot more fluidity in the kind of roles that people are going to be playing, as long as it's not absolutely specific and technical, of course. There's going to be a lot of coordination roles, a lot of management roles that come up, because people are just going to have more innovative ways of doing the same things that they used to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'd again really like to, I think you mentioned something extremely important here, is the fact that roles will get less fluid. And something that you see perpetuated in other MBA schools, and a question that we also get is, why does Vedica not have a specialization like an MBA in HR or in marketing or in finance? And I guess, for everyone who's here and is wondering the same thing, you've heard it from Abhilasha here that, she says, and as do so many more of our mentors and founders and members from our governing council, that, you need to do more with less. And that happens if you have a skill set that is diversely, a diverse skill set that you can draw out from. So that's something thank you for bringing that out, because that's something I guess that everyone needed to hear from an alumni. So yeah, let's go ahead to other questions. Right, so the latest question is, what were your majors at Abhilasha and at Shruti? Shruti, what were your majors? Undergrad majors?
Yeah, undergrad, BSc Research in Economics.
Right, and Abhilasha?
I was BA Literature at LSR and then Masters in Literature at Stephens.
Right.
So literature all the way.
Literature all the way. Hopefully that answers the question. I'm moving on to the next one. Do hotel companies come for interview placements? Yeah, so, I don't know if you know, Oyo is one of the biggest recruiters at Vedica. So, I mean, Oyo is a big recruiter that comes in and hires across several functions. And I guess Abhilasha can talk more about Oyo's recruitment and how its relationship with Vedica is.
I think, look, we've had a fantastic relationship with Oyo and between Oyo and Vedica thus far. I think also having been in this space now, I think there's a lot of companies that have come up in the real estate segment. Having said that, I would just want to put out a word of caution right now, because hospitality is one of the industries which has been the most affected. And of course, hopefully it'll be a cyclical thing for now, but we are yet to see how it's going to kind of kick back and how people are going to start traveling again. What are the spends of people going to be looking like in the next 2 to 3 years? Because obviously what's happening to discretionary spends at this moment. But short answer, yes, great relationship with Oyo per se, and I personally have seen a lot more companies in the real estate side come up, and I think freshers out of Vedica will do great at these kind of places, because they're also startups, because everyone in the real estate space is trying to do something different. They're really trying to democratize space. That's a big trend that I've seen, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities there, irrespective.
Right. Yeah, I mean, hopefully that answers your doubts to whoever had the question. Um, right. What is the uniform system for classes? Any particular rule? Any of you want to take that?
Just semi-professional.
Yeah, it's a semi-professional, semi-professional, semi-formal kind of. There's a handbook that's distributed to all students when they come to Vedica. So all rules and regulations for both the hostel and on campus are mentioned there. So all the information you'll be finding there in your first week at Vedica. Right. So a last question perhaps we could take is, before joining Vedica, what is the basic knowledge base that students should have apart from the current business and market scenario? Shruti, do you want to take this question?
Sure. So, basic no. I think the major thing that you need to have is to be open to learning about other courses. A lot of times, what happens is that you think about liberal arts. You're going to do courses like philosophy, gender studies, and critical thinking. But you sort of restrict yourself when the course is actually going on, and it takes a while, for people to understand. Okay, even if this is not relevant to me now, or in my role as a finance analyst, I still can do better in the course itself. You need to have that open mind, I would say, more than basic knowledge, because right now in our batch we had students from maths, biology, chemistry, engineering, economics, literature, and everything is starting down for everyone. The way the curriculum is set. So yeah.
Right. All right. So the final question, I guess, is about companies in impact investing and development consulting coming to Vedica. Yes, Anisha, that does happen. I would ask you to actually direct that question to the program team. They can give you a complete exhaustive list of the kind of companies and roles that come towards Vedica. Of course, we've had people go to JPAL, we've had people go to Dasra, we've had people go to Satva Consult. There's a lot of companies and roles I can list out. Would be better to inform everyone through an email. Just to let everyone know, if you have any further questions or doubts, you please write to us at info@vedicascholars.com, info@vedicascholars.com. If you have any further follow-up questions, you can write there, and we'll reply back to you within a couple of hours. Right. So I just want to thank again Abhilasha and Shruti. Just one last request. Can I, can ask the students who are here on the webinar if they have any particular questions for you? Can I ask them to connect to you on LinkedIn and ask you there?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that works.
Mail ID.
In fact, I see there's some questions around, say, HR or different aspects. What we could also further do is connect them to relevant people who might be better placed to answer that question from our batch.
From our batch.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, Richa, sorry that we can't answer your question due to paucity of time, but you can perhaps connect with us on the info@Vedica Scholars ID, and we can either connect you to Abhilasha or Shruti or other scholars who are working in this particular space. Right. So thank you, everyone. Just one last word about something that I was discussing with our dean, Anuradha. And both of us were talking about just the scenario of what's happening with the current health pandemic, and how she's expecting that this year, at least the year of 2020, would be very difficult for businesses all across the world. There's a definite slowdown in the economy, and it'll take some time for how fast everything went down. It'll take a lot more time for everything to get back up on its feet. So I think, and she echoes this thought completely, is it's a great time to invest in education. It's a great time to invest in upskilling yourself. And especially at a place like Vedica, where you have such a multidisciplinary curriculum, and you pretty much, there's a 360-degree view of all of education. It's a fantastic place to pick up skills and customize them to your own ability and your own personality that kind of will be applicable to the workforce later on. So yeah, I hope that everyone enjoyed the webinar. Thank you, Abhilasha, once again. Thank you, Shruti. It's been a
Thank
pleasure
you.
having you here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Everyone stay safe, stay home, and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Karan.
See you.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.